Hello everyone, I am the Nast Blast, and today we are here to talk about something truly nasty, greasy even, a marvel of human creation, and something that should be taught in schools maybe, a movie that truly mesmerizes me and makes me question things about this world and humanity as a whole, a movie that has me questioning not just the psyche of man, but also myself. Today I want to take a look at a 2016 movie that I don't see many people talking about, and a movie that I feel needs the proper examination. I am, of course, talking about The Greasy Strangler. This movie is something that changed my life, opening my brain to new possibilities as well as rotting it away. But the main question I take away from this film is, what is art? What determines a masterpiece, and what belongs in a museum to be remembered for generations to come? And what belongs deep in the sewer to be remembered by nobody? And who has the right to determine such things? Not all art is beautiful, not all garbage is stinky, and most importantly, not all dogs are greasy.
What the fuck is this shit?
The Greasy Strangler has an IMDb score of 5.7, a critic score of 62% on Rotten Tomatoes, and an audience score of 56%. But in the end, this means nothing, because everyone will have different opinions of this movie. Some will hate it, some will love it, and some will be completely mortified by it. So with that being said, before I talk about the plot and analyze it, I highly recommend you go watch it and then come back, because it is a wild ride, and the first time you watch it is very much a unique experience. You won't find any other movie like it. So, you have been warned. So without further ado, let's talk about The Greasy Strangler. This movie is about a father and a son who run a disco tour business, where they show people around to locations where celebrities definitely were at some point. And most importantly, they don't serve free drinks.
We must have free drinks. No free drinks.
Everything changes for the duo though when a woman comes for the tour, flirting with the son Brayden, who in this line describes the difference between him and his father.
He likes to shout. I like to smile.
This girl, however, puts a wedge between Brayden and his father, Big Ronnie, which leads into a story of love, death, and betrayal. But before we get into that, we need to take a look at Brayden and Ronnie's relationship. Brayden lives with his father in his house, and Ronnie has an agreement with him. As long as Brayden cooks for him, he will allow him to live there. The only catch is it has to be greasy. Real greasy. Here we see they both rely on each other in a way, and their bond of grease shan't be broken. However, as soon as Brayden starts to mingle with Janet, Ronnie's fear of Brayden leaving him grows, and it shows in his dissatisfaction of Brayden's cooking. Ronnie's uncertainties leads to him donning his alter ego, his dark passenger if you will, the Greasy Strangler. He transforms and releases his pin-up frustrations on the customers that antagonized him earlier, who wanted the free drinks. He attacks all three. First two he doesn't even strangle though. He throws one into a vending machine and caves the other one's skull in cartoonishly, and then finally strangles the last one. This doesn't help satisfy Ronnie's greasy urges though, not until Brayden consoles him the next morning, expressing Janet won't make him leave, and he's not going anywhere. This eases Ronnie, and results in him not strangling the next set of guests. However, Janet shows up once more, with the proposal of going out to eat with Brayden, but Ronnie isn't invited, resulting in him having to fend for himself, which is a big no-no for Big Ronnie. He goes to a hot dog vendor, but the vendor can't supply him with the grease he needs. The man can't satisfy the greasy urges.
I need this dog to have some grease on it.
While Brayden takes Janet home, Ronnie goes back out as the Greasy Strangler to once again release his animalistic urges on the man who wronged him earlier, the hot dog man, strangling him while he takes a shit and then consumes his eyeballs. Brayden told him he would have to find a vendor to eat from, so he did. The next day rolls around and Brayden's best friend Oinker shows up, who has plans with Brayden to go to the horror house. However, Ronnie will not be left alone again. After threatening to evict his son, they let him come along this time, and they have a good night of fun, like going out to the movies and stealing grease from the deceased hot dog man's stand, then forcing Oinker and Brayden to cook greasy for him. But since his grease was satisfied, so were his urges, and he doesn't release the greasy beast that night. However, the next night doesn't go as smoothly. After Brayden loses his V card to Janet, with probably my friend's most common quote from the movie,
Like this, Janet? I don't know if I'm doing it right, Janet. I don't know if I'm doing it right, Janet.
Big Ronnie decides to flirt with Janet in the morning, showing he can be a real smoothie towards women, even watching her go to the bathroom. However, Janet is not impressed with his advances and still chooses Brayden. This upsets the Greasy Strangler within him, and he goes out for another kill. This time, taking it out on Brayden's best friend Oinker, the first person to not antagonize Ronnie at all, and is completely innocent. He is killed just to spite Brayden.
Fuck me! This is amazing!
And has probably the grossest death of the whole movie, which I probably can't show. Hell, I probably can't show half this movie on YouTube. Let's just say there's a lot of greasy sex scenes as well as a lot of dick. Strange looking dick. Ronnie then devises a plan, confronting Brayden the next day, saying he wants to spend time with Brayden's girlfriend Janet, and he convinces Brayden he's doing this for him, because he doesn't want the girl to mess him up and leave him lonely, which actually is the exact thing he's trying to make happen. Ronnie then takes Janet out to the disco, as Brayden cries about it very cuckily, which unfortunately I can't show most of the disco scene because of Ronnie's outfit, which is literally covering everything except for a schlong. And let me just say, there's a reason they call him Big Ronnie, even though just about everyone in this movie has Big in their name, but Ronnie actually earned the title. Ronnie tries his best to convince Janet that Brayden is a loser, and then tries to put the moves on her, which doesn't work too well. This doesn't deter Ronnie though. Thinking he's had a victory, he has a whole dance scene, which again I can't show because of Big Ronnie's big donkey hog. And for some reason, Janet sees his moves from the shadows, and it seems to have some kind of effect on her. I don't know. I guess she likes it. Janet makes her way back to Brayden to console him, letting him know nothing happened. But then they are interrupted with a phone call, letting Brayden know that Oinker has been murdered. They go over to Oinker's apartment where his corpse is still chilling at. The murder of his best friend is what leads to him wanting to investigate the Greasy Strangler murders. And he scoops up some of the grease at the crime scene and heads off. And yeah, he immediately suspects his dad, who he tricks into eating the crime scene grease, confirming it's his grease.
What's on this toast?
Just oil, like you normally have.
Bullshit, artist.
Brayden is shit scared now and calls Janet to tell her his findings. But before that, he tells her that they gotta have a little bit of phone sex real quick, in an infamous scene that I can only describe as what looks like a grown man pinching his little red jelly bean with 2 fingers. There's a big size difference between Big Ronnie and Big Brayden, and let's just say it's not their height. Big Ronnie then goes over to see his only friend, Big Paul, who works at the car wash that he goes into to wash the grease off every time he kills somebody. Only reason Big Paul doesn't know about Big Ronnie's alter ego is because he is blind. So, of course, after farting in his face, Big Ronnie invites his blind friend over for dinner and then to the disco. Brayden comes in and says he wants to go to the disco as well because he has a bad case of the blues, almost completely forgetting, or just not caring at all, that his dad is the reason he has the blues because he suspects him of being a murderer. However, Big Ronnie and Big Paul just laugh at him and leave for the disco, which now Brayden takes the opportunity to investigate his father's bedroom, where he finds a notepad full of greasy pictures of Ronnie doing some horrendous stuff involving oil and Janet, and also a horse. Brayden calls up his girlfriend and tells her he's shit scared and what he found out about his dad. But of course, before that, he's got to get off a little bit and invites her over to finger her butt. Yeah, and it's graphic. Janet then exits the home only to run into Big Ronnie, who for whatever reason finally convinces Janet to have intercourse with him. Maybe it was the dance she saw him do earlier, or the suspicion of him being the Greasy Strangler, or maybe it's just that the third time is the charm. Who the hell knows? But they end up having greasy, nasty sex in the other room, right after she just got butt fingered by Brayden. And he sits in his room and listens to it while he cries. If you thought this movie was weird and graphic before, this last act really starts to ramp it up. And then Ronnie ends up telling his son that him and Janet are now exclusive. And then Brayden calls Ronnie a bullshit artist, a phrase uttered much through this film.
Bullshit artist. Bullshit artist. Bullshit artist. Bullshit artist. Bullshit artist. Bullshit artist.
And then Brayden verbally attacks Ronnie with probably my favorite line in the entire movie.
Oh, you claimed her pussy, but you never claimed her heart!
And then we get a perfect visualization of their relationship, as Ronnie walks forward dominantly with not a care in the world about his son, and then Brayden falls behind from a distance, submissive and afraid to fully go against his dad, even though he stole his girlfriend from him. And then, just to rub it in Brayden's face, he invites Janet over to eat with them while she sits on his lap, and of course, has more oily, greasy, unhinged sex with her, while uttering a phrase that everyone who has watched this movie has ingrained into their subconscious. Hootie tootie, disco cutie. A phrase that pushes Brayden over the edge, confronting his dad and ex-lover, while they stand in the room naked and dancing while repeating the phrase over and over again. This mentally breaks Brayden, and he runs out to the street and cries and rolls around. His mind is broken. Tensions begin to run high between father and son, Ronnie almost letting his dark passenger out onto his son, but he ends up pulling it back. Another day goes by, and Brayden runs into Janet while she's in the kitchen, on a water break from getting railed by his dad. But he actually manages to win her back over. Unfortunately for them though, Ronnie was watching, waiting in the shadows, and this unleashes his greasy nature yet again, donning the Strangler onto another innocent, this time on the only friend he has, Big Paul, who he strangles, cuts his head off, and then plays basketball with. With every kill Ronnie does, he becomes more and more unhinged, not caring about who he kills or hurts. All he cares about is giving in to his greasy nature. With more deaths happening and Janet by his side again, Brayden makes a call to the police about his theory of his dad being the Greasy Strangler. However, Ronnie is 2 steps ahead and impersonates a detective, taking on the persona of Jody, a strange character who literally crawls out from behind garbage to enter the home. And he's got like this weird long fingernail thing going on, and he just acts unhinged as fuck. Bottom of the line, he convinces Brayden that there's nothing the police can do, and leaves. Brayden then decides that because of this, he's gonna have to confront his dad himself. But before he gets the chance to do so, that night he and Janet talk in his room, confessing their love for each other. But to their surprise, Ronnie was hiding under their bed, butt-ass naked, and completely loses it, exposing himself to them. However, this time the roles are reversed, and Brayden and Janet repeat the phrase that Ronnie used to hurt Brayden before. Hootie tootie disco cutie. This leads to Ronnie retreating to his grease, where he has lost all composure. He comes back as the Greasy Strangler, slaps Brayden, knocking him out, and then steals Janet, running off to the horror house. Once Brayden comes to, he realizes the only way that he can compete with his dad's greasiness is that he too has to become greasy, baptizing himself with his dad's grease barrel and becoming another Greasy Strangler,
I can get greasy too.
giving himself fully to his animalistic urges. He runs to the horror house, where his father has brought Janet, where he is strangling her, only for Brayden to become just like his father and finishes strangling Janet to death, making her eyes pop out in the process, and then of course consumes them with his father. Another very graphic death. Afterwards, we cut to father and son talking on the beach, finally understanding each other now that they have bonded through the grease. And through their newfound respect for one another, they decide to kill one more being, a character mentioned before, and someone who was a driving force in making them the way that they are, Ricky Prickles.
Let's kill Ricky Prickles.
This is Brayden's stepfather, and the man who took Ronnie's wife from him. A man who seemed perfect in a world of grease and crust. A man who made Brayden punch his perfect rock-hard abs, and made Brayden do abdominal crunches until he puked fizzy barf.
How old were you?
18.
A man that both father and son can take out their frustrations on, and when they do eventually chase him through the woods, tears his ears off, and eat his eyes, they have finally made their full transformation into their greasy selves, losing their last bit of humanity. And this is visualized by the ending, when they stumble upon their human counterparts in the woods, being executed by firing squad, and then having their heads explode, spewing out grease and confetti. Their human side is dead, and they are now permanently greasy. The final scene of the movie is Ronnie and Brayden in the wilderness, seemingly reverting back to primal instincts, snarling and growling, while holding spears, looking for their next victim. And they look at you, the viewer, hinting at our possible future as victims of the Greasy Stranglers. This movie, if you could believe it, is a little weird, but I do believe there is meaning in the chaos. I believe The Greasy Strangler is a movie about urges, and what it looks like when we fully give in to our deepest, most animalistic desires. Ronnie's desire is grease, sure, but his real desire is his control over his son, and to be the dominant alpha of the relationship. And after being humiliated by Ricky Prickles in the past, that drive for control has gotten even stronger. The grease represents this, especially when he forces his son to cook greasy for him. But when his son finds a woman who threatens to take away his control, that is when his inner urges come out in the form of the Greasy Strangler. When he transforms, all he wants to do is kill those who have frustrated him, starting with the customers at the beginning, then the hot dog man who refused to put grease on his dog. It wasn't until he tried to make advances on Janet and then got denied in favor of his inferior son that he decides to kill someone not because they wronged him, but just to spite his son, and ends up killing Brayden's best friend Oinker. He then gets what he wants and steals his son's girlfriend, the same thing Ricky Prickles did to him all those years ago with his wife. And then he becomes stable, not killing anyone and being satisfied with being back on top. But when Brayden wins Janet back over, Ronnie just can't take it, reverting back to his grease and being even more unhinged, killing his only friend, Big Paul. By this point of the story, Big Ronnie is just about giving fully to the grease and his deepest desires. And after Janet and Brayden confess their love to each other, he loses it, finally attacking his son as the Strangler and kidnapping Janet. If he can't have her, then Brayden sure as hell can either. But of course, this is where Brayden also gives in to his grease, believing the only way he can stop his father is to get on his level. However, Brayden's desires are a little different. Brayden has never cared about being the alpha, he just wants a girl to love him for who he is.
Not all girls like ripped up abs.
Yeah. Some girls like loyal hearts.
But who he is a scared beta male of a man, and he doesn't want to change or think he needs to. And I know there's going to be arguments as to there's nothing wrong about not being a macho alpha man, and I hear ya. But Brayden is just on another level. Imagine saying this about a girl who slept with your dad, and then still wants her back.
Janet was mine first. She loved me only.
No matter how much someone has wronged him, he doesn't stand his ground and always gives in. But we never see him enjoy the grease like his dad does. And when he finally jumps in the barrel, he comes out strong. Animalistic like his father, he gets the urges and decides to release his pin-up frustrations on the woman that has wronged him. With Ronnie and Brayden now both giving into the grease, they can finally help each other out and do what they wanted to do from the very beginning and destroy the force that caused them both to feel inferior. The man who humiliated them both in different ways.
His name is Ricky Prickles.
And when they finally get over that obstacle, they lose their humanity and have given fully to the primal desires and are forever Greasy Stranglers. But now for the real question. Would I consider this movie art? This is a movie that is not like any other and is unique. That is something I can't say about many modern movies. Every year we get movies that are cookie cutter, horror movies with the same expected jump scares and vibes, superhero movies with the same messages and cinematography, animated movies with the same style and fart jokes. But one thing I can say for certain is that there is no other movie quite like The Greasy Strangler. The dialogue, the music, the characters, set design, everything about it is unique, and for that reason, I would say yes. This movie is art. And if there's any message to get out of this movie, it would be to enjoy your grease, whatever that is, as long as, doesn't hurt anyone, and enjoy it in moderation. Because if you don't, and go overboard, and indulge with your urges, well, you might just become the next Greasy Strangler. I hope you guys enjoyed this analysis, and I hope you stay for what comes next. I have been the Nas Blast, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.
I could feast on that queen's ass all night long.